Hello folks and welcome back. Today we are looking at the first of the top 8 matches from our Regulation H Toronto Regionals last year as we get ready for more Regulation H coming up in a few weeks. So like I said, we have top 8. It is between Benny Vasquez and Giovanni Costa here. Two very aggressive teams coming into this top 8. Both players have done quite well here, already making it into top cut and playing 2 rounds of those single eliminations. And for Benny Vasquez here, an interesting team, notably because there is a Basque Legion without a Pelipper. We have Rillaboom, Magmar, King Gambit, Alolan Ninetales, Basque Legion, and Sneasler. Rillaboom here with the Terra Ghost, Assault Vest, Grassy Surge, set that grassy terrain. Woodhammer, Grass Glide, Fake Out, and U-Turn, notably, we don't always see that. Magmar with the Terra Ghost, Eviolite, buffing up its defenses since it can evolve once more. Vital Spirit, Heat Wave, Follow Me, Taunt, and Protect. A very supportive Pokemon on this side of the table. King Gambit with the Terra Fire, Black Glasses, Defiant, Kowtow, Cleave, Sucker Punch, Sword Stance, and Protect. Terra Fire here notably still makes it weak to ground, but resists Fairy a little bit easier. Alolan Ninetales with the Terra Ghost, Life Orb, Snow Warning, Blizzard, Freeze Dry, Encore, and Protect. A lot of times we've seen Focus Sash, but this one's doing even more damage, especially because the Focus Sash is on the Sneasler here with the Terra Ghost, Poison Touch, Close Combat, Dire Claw, Fake Out, and Protect. With that Poison Touch combined with the Dire Claw, you're almost always going to be inflicting a status condition. And then Basque Legion mailed around things out with the Terra Fighting Choice Scarf, Adaptability, Wave Crash, Last Respects, Flip Turn, and Terra Blast. The Terra Fighting is incredibly interesting. They're using that in conjunction with the Terra Blast to get some additional damage out in interesting ways. Does well into opposing King Gambits, does well in anything that goes into that Terra Dark. Notably here for Benny, if you're looking at it, 4 of Benny's Pokemon have Terra Ghost here. We can see that it is incredibly popular. Fake Out is an incredibly prominent move. It's on Sneasler, it's on Rillaboom, it's on Incineroar. All of those Pokemon are quite popular, and Fake Out can be quite difficult to manage. It also does well against potentially Ursalunas, but on the other side here, we have Giovanni Costa, another very, very aggressive team here, even more so, I would say. Whimsicott, Garchomp, Goldengo, Incineroar, Sneasler, and Dragonite. Whimsicott here carrying the Focus Sash. We sometimes see Covert Cloak here, but the Sash here is instead with that Terra Ghost, Moonblast, Tailwind, Encore, and Protect. Encore and Tailwind, a very, very powerful duo for Whimsicott. Garchomp with the Terra Ground to buff up its ground-type moves of Earthquake and Stomping Tantrum. It also has Dragon Claw, Protect, Life Orb, and Rough Skin. Goldengo with the Choice Specs here, doing as much damage as it can early with Make It Rain, Shadow Ball, Trick, and Protect. We've seen Choice Scarf Goldengo with Trick before. This does the same thing, locking in opposing Pokemon into a single move. Incineroar with the Terra Grass to make it immune to Amoonguss because it does not have the safety goggles. It instead has the Assault Vest with Fake Out, Flare Blitz, Knockoff, and U-Turn. Sneasler with the Terra Stellar here to get a ton of damage out. White Herb, Unburden, Fake Out, Dire Claw, Close Combat, and Protect. Again, a high damage Pokemon here. And then Dragonite to round things out with the Choice Band, Inner Focus, Extreme Speed, Outrage, Ice Spinner, and Stomping Tantrum in the Terra Normal. Terra Normal, Choice Band, Extreme Speed can hit like a truck, and Inner Focus makes sure that it not only can't flinch, but if there was potentially ways for its stats to get lowered, which I do not believe Giovanni has to worry about in this matchup, mostly because Benny has no Intimidators. So this is a pretty interesting lineup here. For Geo, you do have to worry about, you have essentially 5 potential ghost types on Benny's team, only 2 at a time at the most, but so we do see that Choice Band Dragonite with the Dragonite card there. Quite a powerful Pokemon, all things considered. Extreme Speed, Choice Band can hit pretty darn hard, but if you're worried about Terra Ghost, that's going to be rough. But going into game number 1, Giovanni Costa leading with the Whimsicott and the Goldengo, and Benny Vasquez leading with the Sneasler and the Alolan Ninetales. So Giovanni Costa, I think Goldengo is a pretty solid lead here, especially mainly into these 2 Pokemon. You don't have to worry about Dire Claw or Close Combat. Sneasler cannot hit you with either. It can't hit you with Fake Out either. So Giovanni with this Goldengo is feeling absolutely great into Sneasler. I don't think Benny can even touch this Goldengo. Whimsicott here can get Tailwind set up before the Ninetales can move. Ninetales is a very fast Pokemon, but it would still take a ton of damage from a Make It Rain. A Terastallization could potentially save it, but Goldengo is still a super strong Pokemon with those choice specs. It's not going to have a turn to set up. It doesn't have Life Orb. It doesn't have Nasty Plot. It's going to be hitting hard and hitting fast. We do see the Terastallization coming through. The big thing that Benny can potentially do here, I believe this is going to be Terra Ghost. Ooh, no, it is going to be a Terra Ghost on the Whimsicott. So I was going to say, one thing Benny can do is potentially go for Fake Out into the Whimsicott if Giovanni doesn't Terastallize, but we see that Ghost Terra coming through, so Fake Out will do absolutely nothing. Ninetales goes for the Protect here, guaranteeing that it's going to be able to stay up for at least 1 turn here. I imagine we're going to see the Tailwind come out. Tailwind does come through. Giovanni Costa, this Goldengo, is now going to make its move. Sneasler is going to stay on this field no matter what, even if Make It Rain would KO it. I'm interested to see what the math is on that. Now, Sneasler does go down to its Focus Sash. We did see Benny being aware that Fake Out would probably do nothing here. And are we going to see Close Combat? Or are we going to see Dire Claw? Dire Claw would be super effective into the Whimsicott. There we go. But it doesn't do much here. And we do not see, even though there's a pretty darn good chance of it, we do not see any status conditions on that Whimsicott. The big thing is that Dire Claw would have taken it down to a single HP down to its Focus Sash, and potentially gotten poisoned. But with that Terra Ghost, Whimsicott remaining quite bulky. Kingambit makes its way onto the battlefield now. It is going to resist a Make It Rain. Gholdengo was locked into the Make It Rain thanks to the choice specs, and Sneasler goes for a Protect. The big thing for Kingambit is that it can go for some good damage into, wow, it can go for some good damage into the Gholdengo, but with a strong Moonblast there from the Whimsicott that does raise its attack stats, but Make It Rain coming in, this is going to do quite a bit of damage, and Kingambit isn't really going to get a good chance to move on the next turn. We saw Moonblast did about a third of its HP, so if the rolls are consistent, I think that's going to mean Kingambit goes down on this turn almost no matter what, unless Benny goes for a Protect or goes for a swap out. Notably, Kingambit does have Wise Glasses, or I think it's Wise Glasses. What does it have? Yeah, or Black Glasses, my apologies. Black Glasses to boost its dark type damage. That could be pretty relevant going into the later stages of the game. But Giovanni, this Whimsicott is feeling pretty darn good here. Both Pokemon do have to worry a little bit about potential Sucker Punch, but I think if you are Geo, as long as one of these Pokemon survives, you have two Pokemon on Benny's side that are incredibly weak. You might still want to preserve that Gholdengo just because it does so well into Sneasler and it does so much into the Alolan Ninetales. We do see Benny swapping out the Sneasler though, putting it into the back and bringing Rillaboom back out onto the battlefield. So Fake Out Pressure, not really relevant here, but Grassy Glide and Wood Hammer can still do quite a bit of damage. We could see with some pivoting as well. Kingambit though goes for the Protect, wants to play it pretty safe on this turn. Geo, where are we going to see the Moonblast go into? It was going into that Kingambit slot. Again, probably would have been enough to take it out, but that primarily combined with a Make It Rain would be the big thing. Now, notably, Giovanni's Make It Rains are going to be doing less and less damage over time here. They're steadily getting weaker. Rillaboom takes like an absolute champ, a little bit less than 1/5 of its HP, or I'm sorry, a little bit less than 1/4 of its HP taken out in that shot after the Grassy Terrain recovery. And Kingambit now should be out of Moonblast range. Giovanni can go for Moonblast into the Kingambit, as well as a Make It Rain. That should still be enough to take it out, but you are putting Gholdengo at a pretty major risk here. Woodhammer is not super effective, but we have seen Rillaboom sacrificing bulk even to get some good attack stats, and Woodhammer is still a very, very strong move. It's boosted by the Grassy Terrain and boosted by Stab, so it should still do quite a bit. If you are Giovanni Costa, you have only taken a little bit of damage on your Whimsicott. You are getting a little bit of Grassy Terrain recovery as well. You still have two Pokemon in the back that are quite healthy. Rillaboom's taking some damage. Sneasler is basically dead in one shot no matter what, and we see the Gholdengo saved for another day. Whimsicott probably going to stay on the battlefield here, try to get out some more work, and Giovanni Costa bringing in a Sneasler of his own here. Whimsicott going for the Protect notably as well, so Geo anticipating that there's going to be some damage going into the Whimsicott, but Sucker Punch going into, I don't know which Pokemon, but I imagine honestly into that Gholdengo. We see the Woodhammer come through, takes Sneasler down by quite a bit, but keeps it alive. So Sneasler puts a lot of pressure on both of these Pokemon. Notably, both Pokemon can go for Terra Ghost here that will remove weaknesses to everything that Giovanni Sneasler has. And with Tailwind petering out, this probably puts Whimsicott into a spot where it needs to set up Tailwind again. That said, Sneasler is incredibly quick. It is going to be faster than everything else that Benny has on the field right now. Kingambit is under a lot of pressure. A single close combat will be more than enough to take it down. Terra Ghost here would be pretty relevant to make sure that it survives. Like I said, it should still be able to take a Moonblast relatively comfortably, but if it goes for that Terra Ghost, going for getting hit by a Moonblast might still be enough to take it. Actually, no, it's both Steel and Dark. It should do the same amount of damage. Sneasler has the option to go into Rillaboom here. You know that Rillaboom is not going to be able to, not only is it going to be able to protect, but it is also not going to be able to swap into something that is going to comfortably take a Dire Claw. Both Ninetales and Sneasler on the other side should get taken out by that pretty quickly. Grassy Glide does quite a bit into Whimsicott, notably, and Sucker Punch comes through into the Sneasler and takes it down. So Benny Vasquez, moving straight past the speed tiers, going for those priority moves. Moonblast coming through from the Whimsicott, again, taking Kingambit down to 16 HP. Another special attack drop, once again, gets that Defiant proc. So these Sucker Punches are going to be KOing just about anything that makes its way onto the battlefield. Whimsicott now under a lot of pressure as well, and where originally I felt like Giovanni was in a pretty good spot, that Sucker Punch into the Sneasler not being a double up into either of those Pokemon, particularly not into the Whimsicott, makes it into a much harder position for Geo, where this Kingambit Sucker Punch is going to be doing a ton of damage to just about anything. Rillaboom with the Grassy Glide can still do quite a bit, but this Dragonite right now is in a pretty decent spot to start throwing out either Stomping Tantrums, whatever it needs to do. Extreme Speed is still a pretty decent option. The main thing you have to worry about is how much damage this Kingambit is going to be able to do in retaliation. Extreme Speed is going to do quite a bit to 3 of Benny's Pokemon here, but if Kingambit goes to that Terrestrialization, it is going to be pretty tough. Terra Fire Kingambit is not going to be incredibly easy to deal with. We do see the Protect out of the Whimsicott here. Kingambit goes for the Protect as well. Where is the Dragonite going? That is the big question. How much damage is it going to do? How much damage is it trying to hit? It's trying to go into that Kingambit and take it down early. It is the major threat right here and now. Rillaboom, though, we could see a U-turn. I think that'd be pretty big, but no. Grassy Glide. Okay, so Protects on both sides essentially neutralize the game state right now. Give one more turn of Grassy Terrain recovery to both Pokemon that really need it, as well as stall out Grassy Terrain. I think this is, I think this is essentially the last turn of Grassy Terrain here and now. Either that or there are 2 more turns. So we did see Geo go for the Extreme Speed. We know Extreme Speed is the option. Kingambit doesn't really want to take that, but neither do any of Benny's Pokemon in the back. So Dragonite applying a lot of pressure right now. Whimsicott doesn't necessarily need to go for the Tailwind when you're locked into Extreme Speed. It's going to be the highest priority move that Geo has available. And even if Sneasler comes back in and wants to try to go for a Fake Out, Dragonite is going to be perfectly fine with that. It has that inner focus. So we see Kingambit retreating, Benny not wanting to sacrifice it right now, potentially trying to get rid of the Dragonite earlier. Sneasler makes its way onto the battlefield here. Any attack is going to take it down from this point. Extreme Speed comes through, Sneasler goes down. Rillaboom could potentially go for a U-turn here. It is not going to be faster than the Whimsicott, but Whimsicott goes for the Tailwind, notably. Okay, so speed back in the favor of Geo here. Sneasler down is pretty relevant, and Rillaboom goes for that Grassy Glide. We saw it take out the Whimsicott before, and it takes it out again. So all priority moves here, but Whimsicott gets that Tailwind set up. Giovanni is now down 2 Pokemon, can bring Goldengo back in, but Goldengo is still under quite a bit of threat. Even though this Kingambit has lost, it's essentially -4. It is still quite strong, and Sucker Punch still does a lot of damage. We could see a Terrestrialization come through still from Ninetales, potentially going into that Terra Ghost, making it immune to Extreme Speed. And right now, Geo does not have to, or cannot really worry too much about that. This Dragonite is locked into Extreme Speed. It only has a few more shots left at it, and Kingambit makes its way back out onto the battlefield. Goldengo is the main thing under pressure right now. If Geo can continue to stall out Kingambit's stall out and preserve this Kingambit, I think that's going to be pretty big in the end game, especially if you can cycle Rillaboom back through. Kingambit does go for the Protect here. Again, Benny noting that Giovanni Costa was highly prioritizing damage onto that slot. And again, Dragonite just meeting into a Protect again. Goldengo should be the fastest thing on the field now, and it goes for a Make It Rain. Even though its special attack is going to be continually dropping here throughout the rest of the game, that is still the move that you're going to go for. Rillaboom takes a lot of damage there. It does drop Goldengo's special attack by 1, but it's still going to be pretty powerful. U-turn comes through, does just a little bit into the Goldengo, but that is going to mean Rillaboom gets to retreat. We get to see Ninetales make its way back out onto the battlefield after the Goldengo went for a Make It Rain. And you're also going to see Rillaboom be able to make its way back out on the battlefield to reset Grassy Terrain and re-up Grassy Glide priority, which could still be pretty big, making sure that it moves before Goldengo in future turns. Now, if you are Benny, this Ninetales can be pretty untouchable if you are smart about it. If you go for the Terra Ghost, if you're able to take out this Goldengo relatively quickly, then you're not going to be able to get too much retaliatory damage. Giovanni, again, cannot go for any other move outside of Extreme Speed with this Dragonite. Rillaboom makes its way back out onto the battlefield here, resets Grassy Terrain. We are going to see Dragonite move. Is Geo going to go for a guessing game here? It'd be really tough if you are Geo to go with an extreme speed into this Ninetales. You know it can Terrasilize into this ghost type, making extreme speed essentially useless. And again, you already know that King Gambit went for protect. You can go ahead and go for extreme speed into that slot. That should be more than enough damage to take out this Rillaboom. But with two choice users on this side of the field, it makes it very, very easy for Benny to predict what happens next. It is all going to be extreme speeds and Make It Rains from here on out. Make It Rain comes through. How much damage are we going to see? Is this going to be nearly enough to take out the Ninetales? No, not quite. My Ninetales survives with 34 HP. We're going to see a Blizzard come through. This is going to be 4 times super effective on Dragonite and takes it down. Gholdengo now down to about 4/5 of its HP. King Gambit's going to make its way back out on the battlefield, and it's going to have access to Sucker Punch. Ninetales loses a little bit of HP from the Life Orb here, but it's going to get a little bit of an additional grassy terrain recovery. So the question becomes here, does King Gambit KO Gholdengo with Sucker Punch? That is the question. If not, Geo wins this game. Grassy Terrain is still here. Tailwind is still up. There are 2 more turns of Tailwind. You're not going to be able to outlast it, I don't think, with Protects. Maybe you will. Maybe you will. Is this the last turn of Tailwind? I wasn't quite able to check. If this is the last turn of Tailwind, then I think that should lock things up for Benny just about. Make It Rain comes through. There's not going to be a stat drop. 1 more turn. Does the Tailwind peter out? That is the question. Okay, again, Make It Rain into 2 Protects. We're going to get some Grassy Terrain recovery. I think the Grassy Terrain recovery is basically going to mitigate as however much damage the Blizzard is going to do, if that is the case. Okay, Tailwind does peter out. But again, with the Grassy Terrain recovery, I don't know if that's going to matter all that much. So, Sucker Punch comes through. How much damage is it going to do to Gholdengo? It does enough, and Benny Vasquez takes home game number 1. So, a little bit of smart play, a somewhat smart play there, but again, I don't know if Blizzard, I think Blizzard damage plus Grassy Terrain damage would have been just about the same overall. All right, let's see here. All right, so going into game number 2, I think for Geo, having double choice specs users is pretty tough. You have to be worried about a lot more than, there are a lot more things you have to be worried about and have to pay attention to when you are locked into those choice items. The biggest thing is going to be essentially exactly that ghost typing. Dragonite's extreme speed is strong, right? It does a lot of damage, but you can kind of get checkmated a little bit if one of those Terra Ghost Pokemon makes its way out onto the battlefield, and you can't really do all that much about it. So Make It Rain also is an incredibly strong move, but it drops your special attack stats over time. It's pretty tough. I don't know if you can bring both Gholdengo and Dragonite to a game. I think that's a very tough call to make. But I think that is going to be the biggest thing for Geo. If you are Benny, that game felt really, really close. I don't know if it felt too close, and you want to try to make some adjustments. I don't know. I think Rillaboom is a smart move. I think Sneasler is tough. It gets completely walled by Gholdengo. That's what King Gambit is there to answer. But even then, an opposing Sneasler can still be really difficult to deal with. So I don't know if bring your own Sneasler for Benny is the most effective thing. You could potentially see something like the Magmar make its way out onto the battlefield. But even then, that would be pretty tough to manage. So going into game number 2, let us see what these leads are going to be. We have Sneasler and Gholdengo for Giovanni Costa here, a little bit of a switch up, and we have Magmar and King Gambit making the way onto the battlefield for Benny. So Magmar, with that Follow Me, can redirect any of the big damage going into King Gambit, and King Gambit can kind of throw down here. Kowtow Cleaves, Sucker Punch, both feeling pretty good. Notably, Giovanni can Terrasilize the Gholdengo away from Sucker Punch weakness, but King Gambit still hits really, really hard. So I don't know if that is going to be all that effective, but the Magmar with this Eviolite here, with those additional defenses, we've seen it be quite tanky. We've seen it be pretty durable and a great supportive Pokemon, able to dish out an additional amount of damage. So Gholdengo under a lot of pressure. It both has story about Heat Wave as well as these dark type moves from the King Gambit. We see the Terrasalization coming through for Giovanni here, going into that Terra Steel. That's not going to buff up Make It Rain, but again, remove that Sucker Punch additional damage from the super effective boost. King Gambit does go for Protect here, making a pretty good call. I think you're anticipating that the Sneasler is going for a close combat, or at least a fake out there. But no, the Sneasler goes for close combat into the Magmar, taking down below half HP. That does drop Sneasler's defenses here. And notably, Magmar did not go for a redirecting move. This very well could be a Heat Wave here, which could do a lot of damage. You do see the White Herb remove Sneasler's defense drops, as well as that'll activate Unburden. So Mega Rain comes through. This is resisted by the Magmar notably, but it is Choice Specs. Magmar just barely survives. That is absolutely incredible. That does drop Goldengo's attacks. Heat Wave comes through and it does not miss. Hits on both the Pokemon, and Goldengo goes down to below half HP, right at a third. So Kingambit Sucker Punch now from this point should almost certainly take it out, or at least do quite a bit of damage. I don't know if you want to risk Kingambit staying in. You could still certainly go for a Follow Me on the Magmar, sacrifice, let the Sneasler take it down, and let Kingambit take out the Goldengo. Goldengo is right now the #1 threat if you are Giovanni. Again, you can potentially terrestrialize away from your weaknesses with the Sneasler. We do see Giovanni want to preserve that Goldengo, swap it out, get it out of that imminent danger, and Whimsicott makes its way back out onto the battlefield. Magmar notably goes for Protect here, doesn't want to open itself up to going down quite yet. Kingambit goes for the double Protect, but doesn't quite get it. Where is this Sneasler going is the question. Dire Claw going into that Magmar, wouldn't have been doing anything into the Kingambit. So Benny clicking that Protect there, that is a, I will say, that feels like a little bit of a strange spot to go for a double Protect versus a potential Sucker Punch into either of these Pokemon. Sucker Punch is going to hit pretty hard. Kingambit hits like an absolute truck. I don't know if it would have taken out the Sneasler, but it would have done a lot of damage, and I imagine it would have taken out the Goldengo potentially. So even if Sucker Punch had gone into the Goldengo, it wouldn't have done anything, but Benny missing out on an opportunity to get some damage there, potentially trying to get a read and gambling a little bit on that second Protect. We do see the Follow Me coming out of the Magmar now wanting to risk it. Dire Claw comes through, connects, takes it out. Whimsicott notably not going for a supporting move right now. Goes for the Moonblast into the Kingambit. Are we going to get another special attack drop? If you are Geo, you don't want the special attack drop. Okay, good. Kowtow Cleave comes through. It's going to go into the Sneasler. Doesn't quite do enough damage. Put Sneasler into the red, but that still means it's alive to do more work. Benny does make the call, brings in the Rillaboom here. Fake Out now is alive and active. That puts a lot of pressure on the Sneasler. Notably, the Whimsicott can still get hit by Fake Out, even if it wants to try to go for the Tailwind. We could see Benny go for some aggressive plays here. Geo, I think you are worried about the Fake Out. I think you need to play a little bit defensively. Fake Out could do enough to this Sneasler to take it out. Grassy Glide, though, comes through. Giovanni trying to make a call here, but Sneasler goes down. Whimsicott now still on the battlefield. Are we going to see... What are we going to see? A Moonblast again. Not trying to control those speed tiers, and Kingambit now down to 42 HP. We see the Swords Dance come out. This is going to boost up Sucker Punch potentially, but I don't think that's going to do enough, even with the potential Grassy Glide into the Whimsicott, to get it off the field. That puts Kingambit under a lot of pressure once again, and Incineroar makes its way back out onto the battlefield. Okay, with the Swords Dance being up, Giovanni is just saying, all right, the attack stats are already stacking up. This is going to put Kingambit at +3, but I don't think it's going to matter at this point. Fake Out now active for Incineroar. You can throw that onto the Rillaboom, and you can also Moonblast into the Kingambit. That should take it out. You might have to, again, you are worried a little bit about Protect, but that will guarantee at the very least that that slot doesn't move, and you can force Benny to go for a swap to reveal Pokemon number 4. Benny has now seen all of Geo's Pokemon. It is a 3-3 Pokemon lead, but notably Geo's Goldengo is pretty weak. We have seen the Dragonite is not here. Incineroar was the pivot. Incineroar, however, also puts a lot of pressure onto this Kingambit. Flare Blitz can do a lot of additional damage. You might not even need to go for the Moonblast or the Fake Out Moonblast combo. You could... Okay, yeah, we see the Protect coming through. If you're Geo, you might have been able to make the call even that Kingambit was going to go for that, but no, making sure, guaranteeing that this slot doesn't move, going for the Fake Out into the Kingambit, and what is the Whimsicott going to go for? Into the Encore on the Rillaboom, guaranteeing that it is just going to be Grassy Glides from here on out. Grassy Glide goes into the Whimsicott. That does break Focus Sash, but it doesn't do all that much damage, and Whimsicott is going to get some HP restoration over time with that Grassy Glide. Now, from this point, previously, we saw that Kingambit was able to survive an additional Moonblast, but I don't think it's going to be able to from this amount of HP. With that Protect gone, you might have to swap out and let this Whimsicott get in a little bit of additional damage. That said, if you are Geo, you're feeling pretty good here. You can go for a Flare Blitz into the Rillaboom even. You can go for a Moonblast into the Kingambit. The main thing you have to worry about, as we see here, Benny is considering the Terra, and if you do have the Terrestrialization, that should probably put Benny into a spot where Kingambit will survive into the next turn and be able to lay down some additional Sucker Punches. Again, it's already at +3. This is still going to do quite a bit of damage. The Terrestrialization comes through. Again, this is for Benny. That is going to be the Kingambit going for that Terra Fire. Now it's going to be a little bit bulkier. It's going to resist anything that Geo can throw at it with the 2 Pokemon currently on the field. We could potentially see a knockoff, but Encore comes through from the Whimsicott. That is an incredible call from Giovanni Costa. We could also see a Flare Blitz coming through from the Incineroar into that slot. That'll guarantee either way that either Encore will hit or Flare Blitz will KO the Incineroar. That is an incredibly bold call, and that's exactly what we see. Okay, that is a phenomenal move from Geo. It still KOs it. It still KOs the Kingambit. It is a critical hit. I think that might have mattered, but the big thing there, okay, the reason that call is so good, Rillaboom is locked into Grassy Glide. It's not going to be doing much damage. Kingambit is immune to Prankster moves while it is a dark type. So if Whimsicott uses Encore, Kingambit will not be forced into Protect again if it does not Terrasilize. However, if it doesn't Terrasilize, Incineroar will 100% guarantee a KO with Flare Blitz. I think in this situation, Giovanni got the best of both worlds. I think that critical hit taking it down, along with the Encore preventing any potential damage, was huge. Ninetales makes its way onto the battlefield now, and Whimsicott follows up with a Tailwind. Ninetales would have been the fastest thing, but Tailwind set things up. Grassy Glide comes through, a little bit more damage into the Whimsicott here. A Blizzard will take it down, and Blizzard should hit no problem, but Incineroar is faster than the Ninetales here, and Flare Blitz, not even a critical hit, takes out the Ice type Ninetales. That Tailwind and quite frankly, some serious speed investment into this Incineroar makes it so that Benny is down to just Rillaboom on the battlefield up against 3 of Geo's Pokemon. Rillaboom's Encore ends, but it's going to get reset again, no problem, by this Whimsicott, and that is going to be game 2 going to Giovanni Costa. That was a very, very navigated last few turns from Geo. Protecting in front of a Whimsicott is always an incredibly risky choice to make. It becomes increasingly more risky if you go for that Terrasalization, but Geo was able to force the Terrasalization either way, either force the KO or force a essentially completely neutered Kingambit, right? With that Protect going up, if you Encore into it, so again, I said it a little bit during the game, but I'll say it again right here. Kingambit, being a dark type, is immune to Prankster. Prankster Encore, Prankster Taunt, whatever. So, if Whimsicott goes for that Encore into Kingambit while it remains dark type, it won't matter. But if it Terrasalizes into the Terrafire, it will. The pressure to Terrasilize was applied by the Incineroar. That fire type Flare Blitz into the steel type Kingambit was always going to KO it. I think that crit might have mattered towards the end in terms of KOing the Kingambit. However, I don't think it mattered in the long term of the game. So finding that position there, finding that move from Geo, guaranteed this game number 3. If you're Benny, that's a really tough spot to get into. It feels like a little bit of a checkmate. It's hard to manipulate that and maneuver those things, but I think we will see another pretty exciting game number 3 on our hands. Let's get into it. So, Benny Vasquez, Giovanni Costa, game number 3 to move on to the top 4. Benny leading with the same 2 of Sneasler and Kingambit, and Geo leading with the Goldengo and the Dragonite again. We saw that Dragonite not get brought in for the Incineroar. I wonder if we saw Sneasler potentially get swapped out. Are we still going to see Incineroar in the back for Geo? That Incineroar did a lot of work, quite frankly. Benny, though, with the fake out pressure, still potential, or actually there's no fake out pressure from the Sneasler, unfortunately. And this Dragonite can go for some good damage off the rip pretty safely. Goldengo as well, not feeling too bad up against this. Could still go for that Terra Steel off rip. Go ahead and get some Make It Rain damage out. At the same time, if you are Geo, it felt like the Goldengo in the previous game was not all that important. It got some good damage out, but it didn't have massive impact later in the game. We do see Sneasler going for Protect here, Kingambit going for Protect as well. I like this play from Benny. You're getting a scout out of what moves Giovanni is locking into with both Pokemon. It is going to be that Extreme Speed with the Dragonite here, and what are we going to see from the Goldengo? It's going to be Make It Rain again? Almost certainly will be. No, it's going to be the Trick. Ooh, okay. That is really important for Benny to know. That Choice Specs Trick is going to be very difficult to try to manage, and getting caught by that in game number 3 would have been incredibly frustrating. But now Giovanni is locked into that Trick. We'll have to use it against somebody, somewhere, somehow, or we'll have to swap out the Goldengo. Not having that Trick as a surprise factor makes it a little bit worse, but if you're Benny, now you're kind of wondering, what do you even do against it? Sneasler is fastest, but it can't touch Goldengo. And so Goldengo can still get Trick off, and a Choice Specs Kingambit would be locked into whatever move it had selected previously, similar to Encore, which means that Kingambit could still get locked into it. But that would not be the case if we went for Sucker Punch. So Giovanni reading that move, Sucker Punch is probably the play for Benny into the Goldengo, brings in the Whimsicott. Dragonite goes for the Extreme Speed, brings Sneasler down to 40 HP, essentially the Focus Sash. Close Combat goes into the Whimsicott. It's going to be pretty well resisted. Sneasler is still strong, though. Sneasler's defenses fall, and Whimsicott does pretty well. I think Benny there was calling the Terra Steel from the Goldengo Ooh, and we do see the Poison Touch come through. That could be pretty big. I think Benny was calling the Terra Steel from Geo there. And wow, Whimsicott does survive the Kowtow Cleave, but it's going to go down to that Poison. That's a very, very tough spot for Geo. Whimsicott falls. Dragonite gets some additional damage out, can still go for that extreme speed into Sneasler. I think if you're Benny, you still need to save that Terra for your King Gambit. But in the previous game, Whimsicott was key to winning things there, and Incineroar now makes its way onto the battlefield here. Sneasler goes down to -1. King Gambit will go up to +1 after that Defiant proc. Extreme Speed still available for the Dragonite here. It's going to be doing plenty of damage, and we could still see the Terra normal terastallization potentially. Unfortunately, that would open you up to potential close combats, but with Incineroar on the battlefield now, you have Fake Out Pressure active. You can still get some good damage out and about. Again, though, for Geo, being locked into these moves with these choice items removes a lot of the flexibility that he was able to use very well in game number 2. So it's going to have to be a much more straightforward game from Giovanni here. For Benny, you get to be a little bit more flexible. You get to change things around. You know what is going to be coming out of that Dragonite slot. It's either going to be extreme speed or it's going to be nothing with a switch. Sneasler does retreat here, sensing that it is in quite a bit of danger, and Magmar makes its way onto the battlefield now. Again, a very tanky Pokemon, but Dragonite does get withdrawn by Giovanni here. That's going to be Goldengo coming back out onto the battlefield. Is Benny able to call this? So we're going to see a Kowtow Cleave into that slot. No, we're going to see Protect coming through, avoiding the potential fake out from the Incineroar, or even a potential Flare Blitz. Knockoff comes through though. Ooh, that is a very good call for Geo, knocking the Eviolite off of the Magmar. That is actually massive. So Goldengo can still go for a Terra Steel here. Sucker Punch will hurt, but I don't think it'll KO just with that steel typing. And then a Make It Rain should be more than enough to take out this Magmar without its Eviolite boosting its defenses by 50%. Incineroar can still also go for a Flare Blitz into the King Gambit. That should do absolutely plenty of damage into it to KO it after the choice specs Make It Rain. That would put Benny back down to 2 Pokemon. And again, I think for Geo, this Incineroar is the key to winning this game. Even if it has to take some damage here, I think that is going to be the way you get a victory. We see the terastallization coming through here. Again, I believe this is Benny. Yes, it is Benny going for that Terrifier on the King Gambit. It will resist to Make It Rain. It'll resist a Flare Blitz, but how much damage will actually come through? We see Giovanni going for the big stretch there, just leaving it all up to whatever is on the table. The Follow Me comes through from the Magmar here, notably. Okay, so Goldengo should still be moving first. Shadow Ball comes through actually into the Magmar. This should still take it down, does plenty of damage. What move is King Gambit going for? A Kowtow Cleave into the Goldengo could be pretty big. It was not a Sucker Punch. Flare Blitz comes through. This isn't going to one-shot. It is resisted. We saw the critical hit do it before. Is it going to do it again? No. It does about 47 damage. So King Gambit survives with absolute ease. Kowtow Cleave coming through should be more than enough to take out the Goldengo, and that will force the Dragonite back out onto the battlefield. Benny up 3 Pokemon to 2. Incineroar has a little bit of chip damage on it from the recoil. King Gambit still feeling pretty solid here, but no terastallization used yet, or I'm sorry, terastallization already used for Benny, but not yet for Geo. Rillaboom makes its way back out onto the battlefield, but Geo is in a spot right now where he can go for Terra Normal extreme speeds wherever and whenever he likes. Benny can still go for a Fake Out into the Incineroar, which could be pretty big. The question is, does King Gambit go down to a Choice Banded extreme speed? Dragonite does still have, I believe this Dragonite has Stomping Tantrum. I do not remember the exact moveset on it, but I believe it still has that Stomping Tantrum that could be pretty big to lock into against the King Gambit. It could even do some damage into the Sneasler. Giovanni might be able to win the Incineroar Rillaboom endgame, but it would be tough. Dragonite doesn't do a ton of damage with that Stomping Tantrum into Rillaboom. Fake Out comes through into the Incineroar, taking a little bit of additional chip damage. Sucker Punch comes through. It goes into the Dragonite, bringing it down to into the yellow, nearly into the red, but it's going to be Outrage that Dragonite locks into, and King Gambit goes down. Giovanni not out of the woods yet. Dragonite does a ton of damage there, obviously, but it no longer has priority. Grassy Glide is still available for Rillaboom, and Fake Out from Sneasler coming back into the battlefield will stop Incineroar from moving. The question is, for Giovanni, will Dragonite be able to survive a Grassy Glide from Rillaboom? Additionally, Sneasler could also go for Fake Out into the Dragonite. It is a strong Pokemon. Doubling up into the Dragonite potentially could give Benny a road to victory. It depends on what Rillaboom or what Incineroar attacks here. Again, though, Giovanni has not terastallized yet. Incineroar still could go for a defensive Terra. Right now, it doesn't want to because it's still potentially taking Grassy or Wood Hammer and Grassy Glide damage from the Rillaboom. So, this game is not over yet. Both players have to make some pretty tough calls. Sneasler going for Fake Out into the Incineroar and Rillaboom going for Grassy Glide into the Dragonite could still be pretty good. The question is, I don't think Grassy Glide takes out the Dragonite. If Rillaboom is naturally faster than Dragonite, however, Woodhammer could still get the job done. There is no extreme speed here. There is not any priority. We see the Terrassalization coming through for Geo here. I don't think it's going to be Terra Normal Dragonite. It is instead going to be that Terra Grass on the Incineroar. So it is still resistant to Rillaboom overall. It can take some weakness. It can take some damage, additional damage from U-turn, and it is now weak to potentially Dire Claw. Sneasler goes for the Protect here. It's going to be staying safe on this turn. Woodhammer comes through from the Rillaboom. Is it going to be enough to take out the Dragonite? No, Dragonite just barely survives. Will it be able to get an attack off? Is it going to go into the Sneasler? It's not. It's going into the Rillaboom. Giovanni with some very, very good move selection here. The Rillaboom falls in one shot, leaving Benny in a 2v1 Flare Blitz coming through. This Sneasler, it's speedy. It can do damage, but it cannot do enough right here. That Woodhammer just barely not doing enough damage into the Dragonite. I mean, that has to be at least at 1 HP, and that should be all she wrote for Benny. Dire Claw comes through. It does finally fell the Dragonite, but Incineroar is going to be able to get off a Flare Blitz and knock off whatever it wants to, and that will be Giovanni Costa moving on to the top 4 at Toronto. That was an incredibly close game. That, quite frankly, comes down to how much damage does that Woodhammer do, and then how much damage does Outrage do into Rillaboom. It did more than enough, quite frankly, and Geo gets to move on to that top 4. A very exciting ending to a very good best of 3 series. So we're going to have more top 8 matches here. Again, there's at least 3 of them that get streamed. I think it's sometimes all of them. So we'll have plenty more before we move on to top 4 and the finals, y'all. But until next time, be safe, be smart, make wise decisions, and farewell.